If you'd like to, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I post every Wednesday. Hey everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. I haven't done a sit-down video in quite some time because I've actually been busy traveling, mostly with EF Ultimate Break. I talk about them all the time on this channel because I'm just obsessed. And I wanted to do a review because I think it is important about doing reviews for trips since it is a pretty big purchase, and for you to spend a week or two or even more traveling with a tour company that you might not know too much about, or the country, or that tour in that country. So I thought I'd do a review. I've done them in the past for Costa Rica and Ecuador and the Galapagos. I think I'm going to continue doing them for whenever I do an EF Ultimate Break trip. And this one is for South Korea, which I think is especially important because I went on the very first South Korea spotlight trip with EF Ultimate Break. Let's just get into it. So I'm going to be looking at my phone because so much has happened. I even did Japan with EF afterwards and I don't want to miss anything for you all. So I'm going to look through my photos because I took so many photos and videos and see as I went on my trip where I went and things like that. My trip was supposed to be from May 12th until late May, I think around like the 26th or so. And it is a 10 or so day trip. I think that's a really good time frame to travel because sometimes 2 weeks can be very exhausting on EF trips. I've said it so many times, but EF trips are so fun, but they can be so draining because you're just going, and especially if you're an introvert like me, and especially with all the people, and if you're sharing a room with a roommate, it can just be a lot, and you're doing things all day long, and then oftentimes people want to go out in the evening. So I think 10 days is like the perfect amount. And I also want to preface that I did a ambassador trip with EF. So EF will have a couple of different Ultimate Ambassador trips throughout the year, which basically just means they're smaller trips that are meant for ambassadors to connect with one another and network. So they're not too different from regular trips, it's just that they are for ambassadors. But the itinerary of the trips going forward and even who will be your tour director will be the same. So let's just get right into it. So my tour consisted of only 6 people because it was an ambassador trip. And there was, again, it was the first trip ever, so not too many people have gotten around to sign up. But I really did enjoy it and love it. Going forward though, it's not going to be only 6 people. That doesn't make it worth it for EF financially. They were saying because I had somebody from EF traveling with us in addition to the tour director because, again, first trip ever. And she was saying that it's still going to be pretty much the same itinerary, just again, more people. So my tour went to 3 different cities, flew into Seoul, South Korea, spent a couple of nights in Seoul, then we drove down to Jeongju, spent a few nights there at a temple. Then we went to Busan, which is a city I really wanted to go to in South Korea, and I'm really happy EF included it on their itinerary. It's a beautiful city on the beach. It's the 2nd largest city in South Korea by population. And then we trained up back to Seoul and spent about a night or so there and then flew out. For me, I had a little bit of a mishap with my flight going to Seoul. Nothing to do with EF. I get to the airport, my flight's delayed an hour, and then they say there's no pilot. And my flight's flat out canceled, and they said go to the front, like where you initially check in at the airport and figure out your flights. So if a situation like that happens, you miss your flight for whatever reason, figure it out with the airline first and then call EF. I finally flew in to Seoul a day late, so I can't really talk too much about the first day. I only saw the photos of what everyone else did, but it just sounds like the first full day that you're there, you kind of get in, you spend the night, and then the first full day, they ended up going to the big palace, if I can pronounce it right, maybe I'll put it here, it's called like Gyeongbok Palace. It's a very long name. It's in the center of town, and there's the changing of the guards, and it's just kind of like a must-do when you're in Seoul. And if you wear a hanbok, which is a traditional Korean style outfit, then you can get in for free. I don't think anyone on my tour ended up doing that, but that is something that would be really fun to do in the future. So they did that. They took lots of photos that I saw. They got to see the changing of the guards, and then they continued to have a city tour because we were only there for 2 nights and 1 full day. So that full day, they really got to see the city. And then I ended up flying in at around like 4 or 5 p.m. and I was really hoping to make it to the welcome dinner, and I thankfully was able to. So they picked me up, and the hotel is a Ibis hotel, which is just a chain of, I'd say it's like a 3-4 star hotel, maybe closer to like 3, but I really like it compared to like hostels or something like that. And I believe this was a Ultimate Plus trip that I went on, which means that the accommodations are nicer. It's only going to be 2 people per room unless you upgrade, which I did end up upgrading for myself, and you're never staying in hostels or anything like that, so it's just nicer accommodations in general. So they picked me up. The hotel was an Ibis hotel in Insadong area, which is a really nice area. It's known for having a lot of different small side streets of like restaurants and shops, but it's like pretty city center as well, and I really liked staying there. It was really nice. There was shopping around, there was the metro that was close by. We were close to a lot of different places, and there's this one restaurant that I went to like 3 different times, and it's a Michelin star restaurant that's run by multiple generations of one family, and they just make all these different dumplings, and dumplings are my favorite food. And I got this dumpling soup a lot, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So looking back, the first meal, always the first initial welcome dinner and then the last farewell dinner are included in your EF price that you pay for. And this was a just like buffet of Korean food. We had our own room, and it was again the 6 of us plus our tour director, so 7, and we just had a huge table full of all different kinds of foods. I have Korean food all the time here when I'm home, from Korean barbecue to bibimbap and kimchi and all this, all that. And I saw a lot of familiar foods, but I also saw a lot of foods that I had not had before. They also had foods like sashimi, which is to me more Japanese, but then there was also kimchi, which I was familiar with, and different types of beefs also familiar with. Nothing, we didn't have to cook anything. It was all served to us. There was like cold noodles as well, which I'm familiar with, warm noodles, but then there were things like snails, which I did not try, but everything else I tried. The snails was like one step bit too much for me. That was pretty fun to just have a massive meal. I tried to eat as much as I could, but I just flown in and it was maybe 3 or 4 a.m. my time, and to eat like a meal like that when it was the middle of the night for me, since obviously I wasn't adjusted to the time yet, was hard. But at the same time, if you don't miss your flight like me or have it canceled on you, at this point you would have had all day, and it would be, you'd probably be more hungry than I was, but I still tried a decent amount. And then the next day we woke up. Again, we were in Seoul still that night. There was an optional K-pop dancing class, which I opted for. That was my first official activity, and I was still very jet lagged, and it was like a proper workout class. Hopefully for you, you'd have an extra day to accumulate to the time, but the dances were a bit more intricate than like a typical dance class, but it's still beginner friendly level, and this is at a dance studio that is meant for foreigners, which was pretty cool. So we did that, and then afterwards we went back to the hotel, met up with the people that didn't sign up for that optional excursion, and then we walked around this pretty well-known street that is only like a 5+ like under 10 minutes, more than 5-minute walk from the hotel. It had lots of different restaurants, it had like a shopping mall and lots of different places to buy souvenirs, and that was a really cool place to go. And that's where we first had for lunch that restaurant that's like the Michelin star dumpling place that was so good. I don't remember the name of it, but I'll add photos. And then afterwards we went to one of the famous underground malls that you'll find throughout Seoul, and there we had some free time to do some souvenir shopping, and I got a couple of things, not too many. And then I also got some boba because that's my favorite. And then afterwards we went to Lotte Tower, which is the tallest building in South Korea, and it has the highest glass floor in the world. So that was at first a bit like trippy to just walk on and then look straight down and it's just to the bottom, but that was really cool and I'm glad we did that. But I have noticed a lot of times on these EF trips, free time, when you can choose what you want to do on your own, oftentimes everyone just kind of chooses to do the same thing. Your tour guide is really there for you for like 24/7, I feel like. But the latte tower was really cool, got lots of great photos up there. And then afterwards we went to VIPs, which was a buffet style included dinner, got to try different types of food, and I was able to see a lot of cool futuristic looking robots at that dinner. I had a robot make my soup, I had a robot take away my plates for me or bring me things, and you just really felt like you were in Asia, like the futuristic part of Asia, like Japan and South Korea, when you think of like the advanced technology that they have often there. Then we spent our last night in Seoul. So I guess there was maybe 3 initial nights because I missed the first one and then I had the 2. Okay, yeah. So then we spent our last night in Seoul, and then the next morning we woke up and we're heading to Jeonju. We made a few stops along the way. We made some stops at some convenience stores, which was really cool because it's Asia and they have so many options. And then we finally got to Jeonju and we just spent the evening in this really cool little street that just has, again, lots of different restaurants and shops and really cute things because it is South Korea. We ended up doing a photo shoot, which was really fun, and then had dinner. And afterwards we saw a couple of like really traditional and beautiful and historical buildings. So Seoul is very much modern, futuristic, big city vibes. And then Jeonju, we were looking at more of the cultural and historical side of South Korea. And I really like that this tour you get to see both, which was great. And everyone was pretty excited to be able to see the more historical places. So we spent the night at a hotel in Jeonju, which was by a theme park. So I got to watch people ride this really intense, scary looking roller coaster outside my window, which was interesting. And yeah, so we spent the night at that hotel and it was a pretty nice hotel. I don't remember the names of all of them off the top of my head. And when you're done with an EF tour, you can't see the detailed itinerary. So I'm sorry I don't have it on the top of my head. If I somehow find it when I'm editing, I'll let you know. And then the next day we woke up and we went to the Jeonju National Museum right when it opened. And it wasn't a really big museum, so we were able to do it pretty quickly, but it did have a lot of different really cool things from different dynasties. I feel like I'm just getting into a lot of different like specifics, but we ended up then like going to this really pretty poppy field, and then we had an included lunch, again with just a whole table that is completely covered in small and large dishes. And then afterwards we checked into our temple, which we were there for 1 night, and it was very bare bones, as in you just had like a mat and a blanket and pillow and you slept on the floor, but the building itself was beautiful. And we got there, I want to say around like 4ish or so. Soon after we got there, we started our activities where we got to explore the temple, all the colorful lanterns. I wasn't expecting that, and it was really nice. We all wore the same gray uniform because gray in Buddhism symbolizes just like neutrality. And we got to see them also like play the drums at one point, and we got to do like a meditation and a bowing ceremony. We had dinner first, and that was all vegan, and everything you take for on your plate, because it's like a small little buffet, very, very small, you have to finish. That's like a strict rule, and the tour guide will let you know that ahead of time and will like warn you multiple times. You have to finish everything you get. But the meal was pretty good. I had like a miso soup, I had rice, I had kimchi, and I think there was a couple of other things, like something with seaweed, maybe some mushrooms or something like that. And then afterwards, we did a bowing ceremony. That was 108 bows with a monk. And that was probably the most physical activity I would say that I did during the trip, because it did kind of take pretty much an hour, if not more. And I would say for the activity level for this trip, it was between low to medium, although I did still feel pretty exhausted by the end of the trip. But that's again because you're going, and it can get pretty humid in South Korea. And I was there in May, just May, I would say. Actually, I was gonna say to early June, but I was already in Japan in early June, so I was in South Korea in May, and it was already pretty humid. It wasn't super warm, it was mostly 70s and 80s, but with the humidity and just all the walking we did, and there was a lot of stairs at the temple, it got pretty hot. So I would also just warn you that it could get pretty humid depending on the time of year that you go. but laundry will always be an option, and you always can shower at the end of the day. That's just kind of what I did. I just showered every day and did laundry like here and there along the way. And then the next day we again continued on our schedule with the temple, and there was a woman that works at the temple that kind of took over the main guide role. Obviously, Sohee, our tour guide from EF, was with us for this experience. The person who was mostly guiding us was someone who works at the temple, so she was really knowledgeable and very sweet, and we got to see more temples and beautiful Buddhas that just you wouldn't expect. There was one where they didn't discover it until like, I want to say 2007, or it wasn't that long ago at all, and it's just crazy. So we finished up our temple stay, which was a very interesting and moving experience, honestly. And then we made our way to Busan. We stopped by a village along the way. It was a bit rainy, but it was kind of nice to have that switch up. And then we went to Busan, which I would say overall was everybody's favorite city. And there it really reminded me of the Pacific Northwest, honestly, specifically Vancouver, Canada though, because of the structure of the buildings. They just reminded me a lot, like the coloring and the look of them, as Vancouver, and it was more gloomy that day. We did a walk along the city. There's like this wooden pathway or trail along the water that we did, which was really nice. It's a beach city, so a lot of different activities are on the beach, and there's so much going on. I've never seen a beach that has so many things going on. There was a sandcastle competition, but these sandcastles were so massive and intricate. I walked on one of them. It was really cool. There was concerts going on in the evenings, fireworks shows. There were people on like hydro jets, I don't know what they're called, during the daytime. And it was a really fun experience. So we got to just spend a lot of time exploring the city, being on the beach, seeing the fireworks. And then the next day we went to the, let me see if I can pronounce it right, the Gamcheon Cultural Village, which was on this hill that had all these really colorful and pretty houses that you just got to see a really beautiful view of everything, and again walk around and see like different little souvenir shops and have like fun cute snacks. And we did another photo booth type activity, and then afterwards we went to a fish market, which was really interesting, and then had a seafood lunch included as well. And then we continued on to have another like international market, so it had more than just fish. It had like souvenirs, food, and really just anything you could want, because a lot of people in Korea just go to these markets to buy like household goods, versus in the States where we might get it on Amazon or like go to like a Home Depot or a Macy's or something like that. A lot of these types of things are available in these markets, so it's really cool to see the types of things that locals would buy as well. But then there was also plenty of tourists, and I also spent some time on the beach as well, just relaxing and being able to just people watch, which was really interesting and fun. And then we spent our last night in Busan. Oh, also before I forget, we got to do this really pretty scenic train ride. Everyone was facing like out towards the window, and that was very pretty, so we did that as well. I didn't want to forget that. But then jumping forward to the next day when we visited that one village, that was our last full day in Busan, and then we spent the night. The following day, we ended up taking like an actual train, not just a scenic train, from Busan all the way up to Seoul. And we had one last night, and it happened to be like Buddha's birthday that was coming up, and we saw this celebration. So one nice thing about having a tour director with EF that's local is they know all the things going on. So she took us to this celebration that was so beautiful. There were so many different colors and costumes and everything going on, and everyone was dancing, and my group started to join in as well, which was a lot of fun. And we had our farewell dinner, which was Korean barbecue, which everyone was really excited about. And I felt super fancy during this Korean barbecue experience because they cooked the meat for us, which normally you cook your own if you have that experience. And the meat was super nice and just, I could tell, really good quality. And yeah, that was our last night. We had like the classic like heartfelt speeches. I really feel like you do get a really good sense of the country in those 10 or so days. And I loved my tour guide so much. If you go, you'll most likely get Sohee, from what I heard between like her and then the woman who works at EF that came with us, is that they're planning to just, for now at least, have Sohee be the tour guide. And I liked to joke around that she was like my little Korean mom, and she was very helpful and would go above and beyond for us. Like when we did our K-pop dance class, she didn't join in, but she filmed everything for us, or she thought of places for us to go to and really made sure that everything was good. And for me, because I was going to Japan in a few days after to do another EF trip, I told her I was spending a few extra days in Seoul on my own, and she was telling me different things about like what I can do, some like helpful tips and tricks. And also she checked out, because I stayed at a capsule hotel, and gave me like she didn't know about it, but she did her research once I sent her the link and told me all about the capsule hotel and her thoughts on it. And then before the tour ended, we did a metro ride, because usually you take like buses, or because our group was so small, we had like a private van, and we did have a metro ride that last day with people who hadn't yet left and had like a later flight. And we went on the metro, and she showed me how the metro works, what to do, because I was gonna have to use it on my own, and she didn't have to do all of that. So I really did enjoy her. I really enjoyed South Korea in general. That has been my overall review. I did film while I was there. I did kind of like multiple part vlogs depending on the cities. For me, I'm really glad I went with EF, and they just did everything for me. And if you are planning to go or want to go, please let me know, or if you went and have any thoughts. I loved my tour guide, loved the cities. The accommodations were all pretty good, I would say, for sure. And the food was incredible. I was always really surprised at how much food I would get on these included meals. I'm not kidding, I wouldn't even be able to see the table. There was so much food, we could not finish. So EF definitely spoiled us, and I loved it. So thank you all so much for watching. I'm gonna do a Japan review next. So if you want to know more about the Japan tour that's been really popular with EF, stay tuned for that. And yeah, I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're seeing this, and I hope to see you in a future video of mine.